Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Here we are for chapter 4 of Ursula Le Guin's The Dispossessed. So first of all, Dana, how are you?
Yes.
How you doing?
Ha 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 ha. Ha. Well, I'm here.
As much as you can talk about.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Charles says he's got the long-term sub position.
Oh,
Congratulations.
congratulations.
English and social studies. Charles, that's awesome. Congratulations. That is super, super exciting. And it's probably slightly terrifying. Let us know. Are you going to be, do you know if they'll be virtual, hybrid? Or are they going to be coming back fully? Of course. And even just depending on what they say now, that might change. Ha ha ha.
For real.
Welcome to being a teacher. Honestly, if you can make it this year, you'll be fine.
It's the trial by fire.
Seriously. God. So that's really great. All virtual to start. That's so yeah. Once we get done talking about the book, if you have any questions about virtual school, we can chat about that if you want. So all right, book, let's go.
Yes, chapter 4 of The Dispossessed.
Yes, in chapter 4, it's another flashback chapter, so we seem to be alternating. Right. And Shevik goes to not the capital city because they don't have a capital city.
That's true.
But it's sort of a central location because he is going to be working with, he's going to be learning, and he's also going to be working with Subble.
Right. And we also get, not only is it a flashback chapter in terms of it takes us back to an earlier point once again in Shevik's life, but also we get a little bit of history of
there
Narish.
is some exposition.
Yes, and it's confirmed. It's been sort of it has been implied, I think, up to this point, but it is confirmed that Anarish is actually a mining colony of Urus, that they're not, even though there is not a lot of cultural interaction, there's almost no cultural interaction between the two worlds, that they are, they're not completely separate, that there is a relationship there. It's a trade relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
A proprietarian relationship.
Yes, which those anarchists on Anarish, some of whom apparently are not too happy about that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't think any of them are happy about it, but they do, they have different perspectives on that. Yeah, Charles, it's difficult, but because it's easy to read it as decades and be like, wow,
the time, yeah.
Yeah, but
decad.
Essentially, decad is like, effectively like a week.
Yeah.
So 10-day length of time. On what is the second page of my chapter, talking about the freight, the trade is a perpetually renewed humiliation. This dependence that they have. They're not truly sovereign. They're not truly free. That they are to some degree dependent upon trade with Urus. And I love her language down there when she says the defense work, and it was boring, and they called it Klegich or Klegic. I don't know.
Yeah, which is
drudgery.
To say their word for drudgery. Yeah.
The use of sound there, just the way that she puts the word together, just sounds nice. I mean, it doesn't sound nice, and it's not supposed to.
But her use of language in the book so far, just in general, is one of my favorite parts.
Really strong.
And for me, that's a compliment, because as anybody who has heard the new episode of the Late Seating podcast knows, our episode, Jason and I's episode reviewing Return of the King, just went up today. And one of the things that annoys me the most about Tolkien are what I describe as the stupid made up names. And I have not gotten that level of annoyance at all from Le Guin so far, even though all the character names, I mean, are made up names, but for some reason they just don't grate on me as much as the invented names and the invented languages in Tolkien do. But
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Is it because there aren't as many variants? Maybe.
I think that's a lot of it. actually, because one of the points that we brought up in the review, the example I use is Faramir and Boromir, and also Boromir kind of sounds like a laxative. But and I was like, why can't their name? And I use an extreme example, but it's like, why can't they be named like Jack and Frank so we can tell them apart? Like Faramir and And I know there's reasons for why the names sound similar because they're like family names, and et cetera, et
Jack
cetera.
and Frank are too close together.
Okay, then Jack and Billy. I mean, it's just.
Well, hey, Cardinal Doomsday. It's
hi,
okay
Cardinal Doomsday.
Right. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I don't, and it's obviously it's all subjective. It's all personal preference, and who knows why. But in Le Guin, they have not bothered me nearly as much. So we flash back to when Shevik was, he's 20 in this chapter, as the chapter begins, and he's going to a new school situation to study with Sabul, who is not the most appealing character. I mean, he's an appeing character, but he's not the most appealing person.
He's a fascinating character.
He's a great character, but not such a great guy.
We can come back.
We can go in order. I'm just sort of throwing things out there at the start, but
that's one of my notes, that we are supposed to dislike him.
Oh yes, I would say that's a safe bet. Yes. Things are quite heavily weighted against him in this chapter.
So I think some of the exposition works because it's sort of Shevik sort of thinking about it as he travels on the dirigible, which is just another fun word.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want to travel on a dirigible?
On a dirigible. It just sounds like a delightful mode of transportation, doesn't it?
Delightful mode of transportation. Delightful way to travel.
Much nicer than blimp.
Oh, but dirigible. It's a dirigible, don't you know, Steve?
Exactly. It's a classy blimp. I liked entering this chapter because you're not immediately aware that it's a flashback. You just know that Shevik is traveling somewhere, and he could be traveling.
Yes.
To somewhere on Urus.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it mentions the Natharis Mountains, which, I mean, come on, don't you remember that they're from Anaris?
No.
You didn't pay it. Jeez.
And it didn't click with me immediately. No, but I figured it out soon enough. But it didn't click with me immediately. I didn't retain that.
Yeah, down towards partway through that first paragraph, down towards the bottom of the first paragraph, she says, despicable as Urus was, still it was another world. And so for me, that was really the first clue that it's still another world. So he's still on Anaris.
He's on Anaris, yeah.
Yeah. But at the same point, I was still kind of asking myself, like, he's curious about Urus, so he wants to see it. So that could also be. So I was still sort of questioning there. But yeah, I didn't remember that Abinai was Abinai.
Abinai is how I've been thinking it, but
I don't know. Anyway, I wasn't, my focus with like all the made up names is the characters, like the places.
Yeah.
Ain't got
yeah.
them.
Same here.
I can manage the two different, the planet and the moon. Got that. Everything else, I'm just like, we're focusing on the characters, remembering who's who.
Exactly.
I liked I did like the history is very expositional, but it feels like his reflection. So it's kind of in character, and I liked that. I underlined talking about Odo, though she suggested that the natural limit to the size of a community lay in its dependence on its own immediate region for essential food and power. She intended that all communities be connected by communication and transportation networks. And goes on from there. But I remember that we were talking about this in terms of whether or not you would want to live in this place, and we talked about.
I had the same thought when I was reading it.
The way that, the way that geography is destiny. Is the way that I sort of think of it. I mean, there's just so many ways that geography affects what happens. Like, the way that vast swaths of Europe and Asia were just like flattened in, the mid 20th century because of the Second World War, First World War, and the Second World War. And then America's just like, we have oceans. It's all good. So,
good luck with that.
Even the American Revolution, it's like,
we're going to
be independent. What you going to do about it? I
Yeah.
mean, sure,
Come
send
over
your
and come
troops
over and stop us.
across
Yeah.
the ocean while we're getting familiar with the terrain here. And, just, yeah, golly. And then just the way that, a mountain range, whether you're to the windward or the leeward side of it, it's going to affect the plant life and the
Right.
terrain and all sorts of stuff. It's all so interconnected. And then, of course, I think there's mention of that's there are reasons that people habituate in certain areas and not others, but I don't know if that was in here. I think I read that somewhere else this past week, and I was like, oh, that reminds me of why they settled where they did on Anaris. That this particular area has fertile soil, but like
Right.
the next valley over doesn't.
Right.
It's too dry or too chalky or whatever. So it was really interesting.
I also like and it's something that I think we've mentioned here and there
They
in the
have limits.
in the previous chapter. Well, yeah, and that because like I have said before a couple of times, I think that like Anarish is not a place I would ever want to live, but not all of that is the fault of the anarchist social arrangement. It just seems like a really really rough place,
Yeah, yeah.
and they acknowledge that in this chapter when in that part that you just referenced where they said that Odo's ideas were intended to be Odo came up with her concept of this kind of a society with Urus in mind.
Yeah, her
Not
plans,
with
however, have been based on the generous ground of Urus.
right. So when the original Odonians moved to Anarish, like of course they wanted to set up a society in accordance with their ideas, but those ideas had been created with a more hospitable place in mind, and they sort of had to make adjustments.
Greater opportunities, yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that there's we're not going back here. They would not regress to pre-urban, pre-technological tribalism. It's like we got to have our internet.
Right. Yes.
Made me think of your Mark. I gotta have my internet.
Gotta have my internet. I gotta be able to order a pizza if I want one.
Movies. I need
movies. Get culture just in general. Like I need.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not going to live in a fucking hut in a village with 12 people. I'm just not going to do that. Not how I roll. And also, I don't want to be a hunter gatherer. I don't want to hunt. I don't want to gather. I want to go to a store and buy what I need.
So you want to gather it from the store?
I want to gather it. I want it to be pre-gathered, so then I can just go and pick from the pre-gathered stuff what I want.
What? So essentially, you're going where there's food, getting the food, and coming home. That's what a gatherer does, Steve. Like that's the way it works. They know where the food is. Like it's just like going to the store.
I don't know why. Why do we have to fight? We fought last time. We don't have to fight this time.
It's one of the benefits to getting to hang out with me is you get to fight.
I get to. It means we get to.
It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. Yeah. So
from the start, the settlers were aware that unavoidable centralization was a lasting threat to be countered by lasting vigilance. Like they're aware that organization can result in hierarchy, and so they are that constant vigilance. Like this is something that's important to us, so we have to maintain it. We have to make sure that they're vegetarians, but it's also part of that's just because
there aren't any animals. There aren't any animals to eat.
You got to be a vegetarian unless you guys cannibalize each other. Hey, Harry. No, I do not think it's a commentary on Soviet interpretations of Marxism. Charles, yes. There was a book that I read recently that I cannot remember the title of, but it was talking about some of the few hunter-gatherer societies and the fact that they are, because they're aware of the cyclical patterns of their environment, they just go with it. They don't have a lot of stuff that they have to take care of. They just they have clothes that keep them really decorated. They tend to live in places where they're not having to worry about big changes in the weather or inhospitable climates, and then they just go where the food is. They get it and they eat that food. What? And one of the really interesting things about that book was they had they would like for the hunters, whoever actually took down the animal would get like razzed about it. Like, oh, you just got lucky, you
Right,
don't
to
actually
prevent
have
them.
any skill.
Yeah.
This is puny. This doesn't taste good. Like people would make fun of whoever was successful in the hunt because it was seen as, you have to make sure that they don't get above themselves and starts thinking that they're the big man. Like
Right.
that's part of their culture. And it's just really interesting that when you're successful, it's like, okay, we got to take you down a peg. Success is rewarded, like, and the person who is successful, they get like the last cut of the meat.
Right.
Like you go last.
Right.
And everybody makes fun of you. But it's at the same time, you are providing a need for you're providing sustenance for your community. And so it's understood that it's, it's good natured ribbing.
It's reinforcing that your responsibility is to the community,
not to yourself,
not to your personal glory, or exactly.
All that Greek stuff.
Yeah.
And
well, and I thought it was interesting. Speaking of like their aversion to centralization and their aversion to hierarchy, or their fear or their concern that hierarchy could emerge, we learn that there are certain functions of their society that they found were unavoidably hierarchical, or at least demanded some degree of centralization.
Yeah.
Which is why the settlement that eventually becomes Abernay, even though it's not officially the capital, it's kind of where
it's a central location.
Yeah.
And it's central to the organization.
And they apparently turn a lot of those functions, those centralization or those organizational functions, over to a computer. So it's done. It's not done. So there's technically not a person or a group of people in charge. It's computerized, but still there is a hierarchy of a sort, because but it's a voluntary hierarchy. Because I assume if the computer
it is not an unjustifiable hierarchy.
If the computer tells you to do something, you can just say, I'm not doing that, and nobody's going to make you do it.
And then also later in the chapter we hear about sort of some of the social consequences of not going with the expected responses. I did like her little dig at their language. The Edonians' first efforts to make their new language, their new world, into poetry were stiff, ungainly, moving. Like it's clunky, but it's like, oh, honey, bless you.
It's all it's bathetic.
Yeah.
It's like
it's just so full of. It's all heart. Swing and a miss, but man,
boy, that you can see what he's going for there, and
gold star for effort, kiddo.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I liked some of the description on the next page. The first leaf bud. When Shevek saw the color of the plain of Abernay, he remembered the old man. And he remembered some of the work that he's done before. The color of the first leaf buds on small bare branches, that clear, vigorous green. Yeah. Dang. Just put me in my place, woman. I'm like, I'm not. I love her writing.
Yeah, the descriptions in this chapter in particular struck me as really, really vivid and really well written in several places.
So, and also we find out that not everybody lives in a dorm.
That's right.
Even if you do live in a dorm, there's options.
Right. You can, if you don't like your dorm mates, you can move to another dorm.
Yes. And also if nobody likes you, you live by yourself. So you would be perfectly fine. You could just be an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, I want my own room.
And it was like, we want you to have your own room too.
Well, and it's acknowledged that custom influences the design of the buildings, because they say how there are houses that have been sort of added on one room at a time, because people realize like, oh, I want my own room, so they just add another room to it, and it's you get the mental image that it's sort of modular. Like, well, we just added another room, and all of a sudden you have a house that's, I think she said they're called snake houses. Is that the term she used?
Trains or something.
Trains. Yes, it was some kind of like, it was like a sequential, you know.
Excess is excrement. Excrement retained in the body is poison, says Odo.
Mm-hmm.
So even when she's on Urus, she's like, don't and I think that also is part of the hunter-gatherer mentality, like the idea that capitalism grows from the acquisition and storage and need to protect stored wealth.
Right.
And it develops from there. Hey, beautifulest one.
Hey, beautifulest one.
Welcome. We are on chapter 4, where Shevik is going to the not capital city in a flashback. I love the description of Abene, the how, like, not barren it is, but how practical it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as Shevik walked, he was constantly aware of other people walking, working, talking, faces passing, and just all the interactions of the people. And her description of it, I wrote that it feels loving. Like, not, it is Shevik's appreciation for it, but it's also Le Guin's appreciation of the casual interaction of people, of strangers who share this heritage.
Right.
So.
And also, I enjoyed the description of the way the city is laid out, where it's sort of like this redundant design where like every sort of area has the same kinds of, like, there's not like a factory district and a residential district. Like, every area is sort of a little bit of everything. Whatever the people that live there need to do whatever they're supposed to do, it's all like in their immediate area, and the city is just like sort of a series of areas like that, very integrated.
It's actually not a capital city because they are not just anti-capitalist, but also anti-statist. They don't want a capital. But that was something that they sort of went with because of the geography and the difficulties that they had on Anaris. They had a central city. It's more of like, it's centrally located, and it's pivotal to their organizational structure. Like, they end up having a kind of one central location that sort of organizes things, and it becomes kind of a de facto capital, but not actually acknowledged as such. And they're really careful about making sure this is not our government. We do not have a government. These are not our rulers. So it's not a capital city, but it's also not a capital city. I love the way Odo is described. Like, you just see somebody sitting on a bench.
Yeah. Oh, I love that part. The
way it goes into it. Shevik, some ways before him, down the darkening path, a person sat reading on a stone bench. Shevik went forward slowly. He came to the bench and stood looking at the figure who sat with head bowed over the book in the green gold dusk under the trees. Love that. It was a woman of 50 or 60, strangely dressed, her hair pulled back in a knot. Hey! Her left hand on her chin nearly hid the stern mouth. Her right held the papers on her knee. They were heavy, those papers. It's the first clue that you get. The cold hand on them was heavy. The light was dying fast, but she never looked up. She went on reading the proof sheets of the social organism. Shevik looked at Odo for a while, and we already know that Odo has died, and then he sat down on the bench beside her. He had no concept of status at all, and there was plenty of room on the bench. I'm like, oh my gosh! That's like deliberate. Like, you can sit next to her.
Yeah.
So, story time. In Walt Disney World, in the Magic Kingdom, like, when you go down Main Street to what they call the hub, which is like that central area in front of Cinderella Castle, there's the statue, I think it's the friendship statue of Walt and Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both standing, and they're right there. You can get a picture in front of it. But what a lot of people don't know about is the statue in the town square, like right when you enter. And it's Roy Disney and Minnie Mouse, and they're sitting on a bench, and there's room beside them.
No.
And it really demonstrates, Walt is the one, he's looking ahead. He's holding Mickey's hand, but he was the one with the vision. But Roy was, sort of on the business end of things, and sort of the organizer who made it possible to carry out Walt's vision, even though, he's not really the one who's remembered nearly as much as a result. Right. He's not like
he's not the face of the thing.
He's not the face. He's not the face of Disney. And it's really interesting to think about it. I'm like, oh, it's like Roy. And I mean, she's, despite the fact that she is the face and the voice and the mind of this culture, that she would not put herself forward that way. And
Right.
it's just,
And and the reveal that, or the way that Le Guin allows you to figure out that this is a statue, is one of my favorite parts of the chapter, because I love writing like that. I love storytelling like that, just in general. Whether
so
it's
smooth.
yeah, and whether it's writing or filmmaking or whatever, like I love it when the storyteller is restrained enough and respectful enough of the intelligence of the audience that they let you figure it out on your own.
It just, and I talk with my students about that, the setup and payoff. Like when it's well done and your audience figures it out, they get to feel smart and it makes them happy, and then they're really sucked in.
Yeah, and it is a balance you have to strike, because there is a such thing as being too vague.
Yes.
As being obscure,
and then your audience is like, why don't you just say what you mean?
Exactly.
I do that a lot.
And she really nails that balance, where she does finally refer to it specifically as a statue at the very end of that passage. But by that point, you've already figured it out. You don't need her to tell you it's a statue. It's just confirmation. Yeah. You know that you figured it out already.
Does she even say? Oh, yep, there it is.
Yeah, the young man sat beside the statue. Yeah. Yeah.
Harry Harrison, they actually moved it. It used to be by the flagpole. I think right now it's outside the fire station. But I mean, I haven't been to the Magic Kingdom in a little while, so I don't know if it got moved again. So, but yeah, it's near guest services. But yeah, it's right in town square there. I loved the bit. I didn't agree with, and again, we're getting this kind of through Shevik's eyes. He says Odo was an alien, an exile. And I'm like, an exile means you've been sent away, like rather than you've gone away. Well,
but wasn't she in prison though? Maybe he means that.
No, I feel like he's talking about her there.
Right.
Like as
what she represents.
Because she's not actually there. Right. She's still really a part of Urus. She never became an Honoresti.
Right, because she died before they moved, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Because obviously she's buried on Urus.
And she's like in her own little bubble. She is forever apart, which maybe is like I just felt, I was like, exiled is what happens when your community rejects you. Like we see Shevik feels conflicted about later on. But I mean, the same thing has not happened to Odo. She just, the community moved on without her, but they didn't exclude her. I don't know. I was like, but I mean, it may just be that there isn't really a word for that in English. So,
right. Yeah,
but
maybe
my note says not exiled, just apart.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Separated.
Maybe. Yes. Yeah. The next note I have, so he goes on and he gets his housing assignment.
Yes, and this is sort of a cute sequence I hear, because
food.
Yeah. Oh, that. Yeah, and he learns. I mean, he learns to well, he goes to eat late, and there's usually food left over. So he's like, well, it won't hurt anything. I'll just take an extra portion of dessert,
Yeah.
But yeah, and also there's like when he first gets to his room, he notices that there's a blanket on the bed, and at first he assumes that it's somebody else's room. Like he thinks about like going back and asking for another room assignment, because he's like, somebody must live here. But then he sees his name next to the door, and he's like, oh, okay. But there's like a moment where he's like, wait a minute,
there's a blanket here. This must be somebody's.
This must be somebody else's room, and it's not. Yeah.
Or this must be a room that someone else is using.
Right.
Because it's not somebody else's room. They don't own it.
That's yes, of course. Yes, of course. We have to maintain their silly conceit about
ownership.
Yeah.
So, but it was, I will say, the fact that the closet does not have a door stood out to me, that it had a curtain.
Yeah.
Because of course, I mean, they have, limited
resources. Limited resources.
But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. You can see behind me. Like in that case, why have a closet at all? Why not just have like a set of poles?
A rack. Yeah.
Yeah, a rack.
Yeah.
I'm like, so I was like, that. So how do they have a closet? Plus, you need then the textiles for the curtain. I was like, but you could just have a closed rack. So it was just interesting to think about.
I kind of get the impression, I mean, and maybe like it's clearly not the kind of planet where they can have that many luxuries. And plus they have this philosophy that tells them that they shouldn't want luxuries. But I feel like they find little ways to give themselves nice things when they can. And even something as simple as a closet, as opposed
to hooks on the wall.
Right. They could, exactly. They could just have hooks on a wall or a bare rack, but there's something kind of harsh about that if you're just staying in a bare square room with a rack in the corner for your clothes. So, there's, I don't know. Well, we can, come on, we can have a closet. We'll put a curtain instead of a door.
That's part of, like the blanket being there.
Yeah.
He notices as he continues to live and interact there, he's like, they have nicer stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not, that's not.
Is that
fair.
Okay?
No, it's not. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, it's not okay. They have nicer stuff. I mean, they don't have more value as people. Why should we get nicer stuff just because we happen to be here? So, and then finally we meet Subble.
Oh, yes.
And he is introduced in unflattering terms.
Yes, slovenly.
Yes, slovenly is not positive.
Not generally.
Small,
no.
But it's also alliterative because he's supple and he's small, stocky, and slovenly.
Yes.
And now, I missed this the first time. He's younger than we are.
Yes, he's my age. He's younger than you are, my dear.
Oh,
but
yeah,
he's
your age.
Yes, but fortunately, I am not small, stocky, or slovenly. Am I, Dana? I need affirmation.
Well, not stocky, but you've been working on that. And you're as tall as I am, so I don't.
That's right. I'm not small.
We're not small. No, but I don't think we're slovenly.
I wouldn't say. I would never describe you as slovenly.
Well, thank you.
I'm just going to put that out there.
I'm more slovenly than you are. I mean, you're very domestic. You're very diligent about that. You're welcome, and you fold your laundry and put it away. I'm just like, I'll just leave it in the basket.
As soon as I bring it out of the laundry room.
So slovenly means like kind of lazy and sloppy together.
Yeah.
But sloppy with not just carelessness, but not just like sloppy because you don't care, but just like, whatever.
Exactly.
You just don't, not in the sense of being like absent-minded and like, oh crap, I spilled stuff on me. Well, that'll be okay. It's like, you just, don't give a yes.
Yes, you exactly.
I'm going to try not to cuss.
Oh, you're ultra trekkie like Felix Unger. Yes, that's a good example. Yes, like Felix from The Odd Couple. Or no, yeah. or no. Oscar is the slob. Felix is the fastidious one.
I get confused. I was in the other one. I was in the flipped the gender changed cast. So I don't know him that well.
I think Felix is the neat.
But whichever one the sloppy one is.
Felix is the neat one, and Oscar is the sloppy one. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's Oscar's the sloppy one, but
on the next one I put and we talked about this with the Batman when we talked about the Batman and Cops video a little bit, but I don't remember if it actually made it into the video because my note for this is we aren't supposed to like Subble, but then
certainly.
My note below that says
certainly not, no.
And my note below that says, why did he become like this?
Right, because it's not just that he's of slovenly appearance. When he speaks to Shevik,
the first thing he says, he's just like, twice in 2 sentences, he growled, "You've got to learn Eotic." He growled at Shevik.
Yeah.
And then Shevik's like, huh? He says, "Learn Eotic." I said, "Learn Eotic." Like, don't
Right.
make me repeat myself.
He's
Kidding.
really gruff and kind of pushy and just not a pleasant person all
His
around.
manner was abrupt and grudging.
Yeah, exactly. Which it perfectly sort of sets that character for you, you know. And then as we find out later, he's also
Propertarian.
well, not just propertarian, but I mean he's a little bit of a shit about stealing credit for things.
Propertarian, dude. I mean, it just not just propertarian with objects, but with propertarian with the credit. It's
Right.
my credit.
He's a thief. He's a thief. And he takes credit for things that there's when Shevik publishes a theorem, you know, and Subble puts his own name on it beside Shevik's as though he contributed to it when he didn't. But
Shevik submits a theorem, Subble publishes it.
Right.
It's like it's like my dude, my man. What was the guy? The mathematician, Tom Lehrer.
Tom Lehrer, yeah.
He sings the song about plagiarize. Let everyone else's work majorize. Remember why the good Lord majorized. So plagiarize. Only be sure always to call it research.
Exactly.
And so he's talking about like a famous mathematician who stole somebody else's theorem, like, took somebody else's ideas, but published them first. So he gets the credit. It's all about publishing first.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Snape, if Snape was short, it's like he's just as much of a jerk as Snape. And so, he's like, here, take the books, read the books, learn from the books. I don't have time for you.
Yeah. And also we find as we spend some time with him throughout the chapter, he's extremely dismissive of ideas that Shevik is drawn to and that Gvarab is associated with. Like Sabul is like, he's like, no, forget about that. Don't waste time on that. That's just, you're a grown up now, grow up, focus on this, and of course it turns out that he's wrong.
And also dismissive of Midas.
Yes. He's just a jerk. He's just a big jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, keep these books with you. They're not for general consumption.
Yes.
But also just the way he's also very manipulative. He manipulates Shevik. He's like, it's like you wouldn't just, if you found like explosives, you wouldn't just pass them out to kids. Jeez. Right.
And these books are explosives. Yeah.
Yeah. Privilege is a responsibility. And so I'm like, very much just vivid description, but I became curious about him in a way that I hadn't the first time that I listened to this. And I'm just like, so how does, thinking, given that the conversations that we've been having and, the lefty slant to your channel, and especially even beyond what you actually think, your audience here. Yeah. How does it get to be that way, especially on friggin' Anaris? Like, and I feel like that's what Le Guin is getting at. Like this, you have to be vigilant because this is going to happen. You're going to have people like this. But what she doesn't tell us is, well, how did this happen? He didn't just spring from the womb like this, a 40-year-old dude who's, lazy and sloppy and grumpy, and several other dwarves apparently.
Slovenly.
Yeah.
My favorite dwarf. Well, don't you think part of it is, and it's one of the things that I appreciate about the book so far, is that even though it is presenting this anarchist society as a place that seems to function for the most part, it isn't presenting it as a utopia.
Yeah.
And one of the things that keeps it from being a utopia is just human nature. Sure, if you raise people in this culture and you teach children to value the community and to not get attached to things and to not look at things with a sense of ownership, of course that will come across to most people, and most people will learn to see the value in that, and they'll be educated, and that'll be inculcated in them. But there will always be people like Sabul who look around and notice the hypocrisy and notice the ways that their society by necessity, like this, the certain amount of centralization that they need, the fact that even though Abernay is not technically the capital city, that's totally what it is because it has to be, because that's just the way things have to work. He would notice things like that are maybe inconsistencies between the principles that they hold and the way that they actually live. And he would say
principles and practicality.
Yeah, and some of which are unavoidable. And he would say, well, if we're going to compromise on this, why can't we compromise on this? And if
Harry, I meant, babies aren't like that. They're not 40 years old. I mean, like by definition.
Yeah, he wasn't born that way. He got that way through the same way other people get the way they are, through social conditioning and through parenting and through his experiences and whatever.
And there, you mentioned almost all of those characteristics can be part of the behavior. Yes. There is a biological component. I mean, obviously everything that we do is biologically based, but oh shoot, what was that? There was a book on gender that I read last year. And it was a pun on Tyrannosaurus Rex. But they were talking about DNA. And there's a pun in there. Anyway, it's on. Shoot, I'll put it in the comments if I can remember. Like I don't know, message me or something, and I'll put it in the comments later.
Yeah.
But yeah, the author talks about how we think about the way that our biology influences us, and our DNA influences us, and our brain influences us, and how we influence the world around us. But what we don't think about is the way that our environment influences our biology. And literally can reprogram our brains based on what we experience. We, through our thinking, our acting, what we choose to do, that creates patterns in our brains. So, I mean, we have research about this. So essentially, nobody is born the way they are. Nobody is born like this, like that. Steve was not born that way. Right. We are not born the way that we are.
Yeah. Period. We're products of our lives. We're products of our experiences and our environments.
We also are products of our biology. We're products of how our biology is influenced by the environment, and then the choices that we make on top of that then influence ourselves in our environment further.
Yeah.
So it is complicated and
it's very complicated.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Excuse me. I loved the description about Shevit growing up. Being different.
Yes. Always having the sense that he was a little bit out of step with the other people around him.
And that's something that, especially remembering that he's 20 here, is really, really interesting to me. Because I mean, I have that sense with where I am. I am out of step at 42.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's really only in, I would think, the last several years that I've started to make my peace with that. That learn about that ways in which I am an outlier, and most people aren't like me in certain ways, and that's just how it is. And to be aware of that, when I'm interacting with other people, and I like who I am, and so I'm not necessarily going to change who I am.
Right.
But I am also a member of a society, and I have, I'm not particularly interested in hurting people or, making them unhappy. All other things being equal. So, him at 20, that sense of aloneness and difference, sometimes it's hard to put your finger on. You don't know why you're different. You're just they like doing things that I don't like doing. Why do they like doing things that are boring? What's wrong with them? And you don't it's almost like you don't think why do they like doing boring things? And then occasionally I go to you, maybe there's something wrong with me, but there's not something wrong with me because I don't like boring things. That doesn't make sense either. So it's a sense of aloneness, and you don't really understand why. So yeah,
but then he finds through the work that he is given by Sebald to do, and then when he sort of finds his way into it and comes to
Yes,
to
because
enjoy
he
it.
understands what he's reading about, even though he
Right.
doesn't understand the language. That sort of helps him make sense of the language itself.
Yeah, which
Context.
that was another part that I really liked. There came a point when he was no longer, it describes it as he was no
Yes.
longer reading iotic, he was reading mathematics. Like he it ceased being, I have to learn this new language, and it became like, no, I get this now, I understand this, and they're talking about principles that I'm already familiar with, and I get it now.
Yeah.
And also,
and then of course the foreshadowing there. Yes.
and the nature of the work, and the fact that he has his own room, that he doesn't live in a dormitory for the first time in his life. Like, he comes to like that. The text actually, the chapter actually says that it became dear to him. It was unusual at first, but because of the nature of his work, that was just better if he was on his own, so he could work, on his own schedule and without distraction. It became dear to him, and he began to enjoy being set apart from people
and being able to study.
Yeah.
And also he acknowledges that, because he is sort of torn about it. This is a privilege that not everybody has. And then also there's some shame with it, that you are being exiled, that nobody wants to be with you. There's that sense of that. But he also acknowledges that he is doing work that has value. He is helping his society, and he needs to be by himself in order to do this work effectively. So he's like, okay, it's practical. And then I loved the bit about, he realizes the most brilliant insights of Sobel's own works on sequencing were in fact translations from the Eotic, unacknowledged.
Yes.
But he doesn't seem, he's just like, oh, okay. And he just goes with it. I'm just like,
that's going to come back, Chev. That's going to come back.
Because he doesn't, like, he has no experience with this, someone being propertarian, for someone like in Wag the Dog. I want the credit.
I want the credit.
I want the credit. Well, and you know what? That it didn't end well.
No, spoilers for Wag the Dog.
That just didn't end well.
Which is a great movie, but if you haven't seen it, it doesn't end well for the character that wants the credit.
Yeah. And then he's Sybil always being, and when Shevik discovers that they also communicate with the profiteers, he's like,
right.
Why would somebody want to communicate with them?
He finds out that they send letters back and forth on the trade ships. Yeah.
Why would someone do that? Like,
yeah.
It's like poison.
His innocence.
You don't want any of it. It's bad.
His innocence and his naivete. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Well, and I think that
letters to propertarians, to subjects of governments founded on the inequity of power, to individuals who were inevitably exploited by and exploiters of others because they had consented to be elements in the state machine. Did such people actually exchange ideas with free people in a non-aggressive, voluntary manner? Could they really admit equality and participate in intellectual solidarity? Or were they merely trying to dominate, to assert their power, to possess? And I wrote in the margin, propagandized. I mean, he's like hook, line, and sinker. And of course, she's also describing Sybil.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the kind of person Sybil is.
He does not get it yet.
Yeah. And we also see in that passage you just described, like this has been something that we have seen in Shevik in both of these flashback chapters, and even to an extent, even still when he is sort of finding his way on Eurus in the present day chapters, seeing how his ideology, his assumptions, his philosophy is not always adequate to describe or to deal with the complexities of the world. Like and part of it is, again, it's not necessarily his fault, because he grew up on a world that was completely cut off for the most part from this other place that operates under very different principles. So he has these assumptions of, well, they must live like this. They must do things this way.
Most people are like that. And most people are like that. But the fact that they don't acknowledge that people can, which is inconsistent because they are so vigilant about trying to avoid, propertarianism and trying to avoid the centrality, that they are very careful with Abinai.
Yeah.
That the idea that they don't acknowledge that people can have these propertarian tendencies seems odd. You know what I mean? Like they're propertarians and we're not, and that it's not acknowledged that human nature can be propertarian, and here's what you should look for. You know what I mean? But the other thing is that it's possible that that's something that wasn't math. So he just didn't pay attention to it.
Yeah, because we've seen him experience that already. We see in his relationships with women, where he said I think in chapter 2 in the first flashback chapter that he wanted to possess her and be possessed by her, which is not.
Yeah, and at the same time he's conflicted by this because he knows it's wrong. It's
so
wrong.
Yeah, so maybe you're right. Maybe because it isn't math related, like he doesn't associate it. But it's the same idea. Like
he wasn't really paying attention to those lessons.
Right. You have this impulse. You have just an impulse and it is what they would call a propertarian impulse that just sort of comes on you naturally. And maybe you might decide you want to guard against it or to try and repel it, but it's there nonetheless. And so they're certainly familiar with it.
Cardinal Doomsday are talking about Animal Farm over here in the chat. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. It's in terms of propaganda, and then of course you mean 4 legs good, 2 legs better, right? It's not that oversimplified, but it's along those lines, and we don't really get the explanation of why he's so naive. But I think some of it has to do with his giftedness. He does show some signs of some autism style behaviors and tendencies. This of course came out I think in the 70s, so there's not a lot known about autism then. But I think he is set apart, and of course like Odo is. I think that's why he connects with that statue. She is literally set apart. She's not part of their society, even though she's the one who dreamed it up. And so there's that connection there because he feels like he doesn't really belong. And this is even before he ends up over on Urus, where he really doesn't belong. So, it's just really, really interesting. And then on the next page that he's still not comfortable with the idea of keeping this private. And, it occurred to him that Sabel wants to like make it just his. He wants to hold on to it. He's being grabby. He's being propertarian. I mean, like it's not even in there. It's literally not in there. This idea was so counter to Shevik's habits of thinking that he had great difficulty getting itself clear in his mind. And when it did, he suppressed it at once with contempt as a genuinely disgusting thought. Well, of course, we know that he's thinking about Sybil. We are not just supposed to dislike him. We are supposed to be disgusted by Sybil. And so, to some degree, this book is really good at preaching without being preachy. I mean, she's preaching here. Like, this is Sybil is being grabby and greedy and not being sharing. Knowledge should be free. Understanding should be shared. And he's clinging to it, and that's crappy of him. Right. That's bad. And you should think it's bad. Yeah. But she's not being nearly so just like, you should think this is bad. Capitalism makes us all into jerks like him. She's much better at him. No. Yes, indeed, Cardinal Doomsday. It is an excremental thought.
Well, I like that Sybil has other. It's not just that Sybil wants to exercise ownership over the ideas or wants to use the ideas to lift himself above his colleagues or these other things that are contrary to their philosophy.
Yeah.
It's also that he, just in case that's not enough to convince you, the reader, that he's a bad guy, as we mentioned already, he's also a thief. Like, no matter what your political philosophy is, I think most of us would agree that knowingly taking credit for someone else's work is not okay, and yet we see that Sybil does that, and apparently has done that a lot, to the point that he has, among people in the know, like, he has kind of a reputation as that guy, as the guy who puts his name on stuff that he actually had nothing to do with, because he wants to be associated with ideas that, he may not even fully understand, but he wants everybody to know that he was part of this.
And it's really interesting to think about, because if they don't own it, why does it matter if he puts it? Like, people in the know don't really seem to care. They know who did the work.
But see, I think whether it's a matter of ownership or not, I mean, it's not okay. Like, if you write something and I take credit for it, that's not okay. Whether it's
deceptive.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and again, I think we see that he's manipulative, but it's hard to think of it in, it's easy to think of it in terms of stealing, because we live in a capitalist society.
Right.
But I don't think that Shevik would see it as stealing. He would think of it as, why would what are you doing? You didn't write that. Why are you putting your name on it? Oh, I guess because, you published it. Okay, so what? But at the same time, he starts to feel, but I wrote this. It's mine. I shouldn't say that,
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting. Harry Garrison, nope. I was not a purple child. I like purple. It is the best color, but I think that is not the sense in which you're taking it. I was identified as gifted, so which I have no idea how it helped me when I was little. And then when I was in junior high school, I just sort of left the program because we were doing stuff and projects, and I was just like, yeah, okay, this is not important to me. And then in high school, because I was still on the roster, I said, can I just design my own program? And they said, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I've been taking French, but I'd also like to take Spanish. Can I leave French class, and they have a Spanish 1 class at the same time as my French 4 class, or French 3? Can I take Spanish on Fridays and see, if I can pass the final? And they said, well, if you can pass the final, you can go to Spanish too. I was like, okay. So, it was great. I had a lot of freedom, and I would love to be able to have something similar for our, not even necessarily gifted students, because there's all kinds of evidence about what exactly is it that the tests are measuring. Let's be honest. But for our students who would benefit from additional challenges, I don't know, something like that. That was really helpful for me, being able to say, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I want to study. If I keep my grades up, will you let me do this? And they said yes. It was great. So on the other hand, we see some problems with that with Shevik, because he got to focus on what he wanted to, and maybe he didn't get the socialization that he might have benefited from. And then, that was something Charles, did Charles say it? The responsibility justified the privilege. That was another one that
he's coming up with reasons for why it's okay for him to be a little different.
But he does struggle with it. I don't think
it's
just an excuse. It's kind of coming to an understanding of, things aren't always cut and dry. Things aren't always easy. And there's not necessarily a nice mathematical there's not always a right answer.
But he is seeking a way to reconcile it. He's not just saying, well, I wasn't raised to think that doing it this way is the way it should be done, but I'm going to do it anyway. He's trying to find a reason why it's acceptable. That's where the line to the responsibility.
Not, is it not acceptable? Where were we here? He have we gotten back to the stewed plums? Yeah. Not only does he stop taking extra desserts, he stops eating dessert.
Yeah.
Because he's isn't everybody supposed to share equally? And we're not. And that's not right. And so, I love the phrasing here. What was it? his conscience got indigestion.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great
I
phrase.
just think, he's so earnest. He's so earnest, and he's so he has integrity. Whatever the adjective that goes with that, what would you say that is? Integritus?
Yeah, I guess. Integritus.
Integritus? Anyway,
Honest, upstanding.
yeah, I know, but honest,
Yeah.
it's more than honest. It's but
Forthright.
upstanding.
Yeah.
Righteous without being self-righteous.
Yeah,
He's not
well,
a jerk about it.
because he's smart enough and he's curious enough, and he does have enough awareness of the larger picture besides just what he is personally focused on, that he recognizes that his society, which he genuinely cares about and supports and believes in, only works if everybody's on board.
Yeah.
And if people feel,
or if at least you have to, like, Malcolm Gladwell's book, the Tipping Point, you have to have,
you have to have enough people.
Yeah.
So if there are too many people who decide on their own, because there's no compulsion in their society, if there's too many people that decide of their own free will, well, I'm just not doing it that way. I don't care about the community. I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to take as much dessert as I want. Nobody's going to stop me. Then the whole thing falls apart.
In some senses, it works that they're on Anaris, and if they don't all pitch in together, they're going to die.
Right. Yeah. In that sense, yeah, the limited resources actually works.
It works to the society's benefit.
But because there's a constant pre-existing pressure on everybody to stick with the program.
In or die.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love that, he's starting to dream about his work. I really liked that. And Charles says, I wonder if part of the fact that there are always extra desserts implies that there are others there who are making the same choice as Shevek. That's possible, although Shevek seems to think that the availability, well, also he points out that dessert is available every night, whereas where he used to be, that wasn't always the case. There would be occasional desserts, but it wasn't always available in the first place.
Right.
But yeah, it's also possible that other people are like, we'll only have dessert a couple of times a week because, that's what everybody else gets. So that's what I'll take. And it's interesting. It would be interesting to think about what happens to the extra dessert, once the night's over. Like, what happens to it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It doesn't get eaten, so technically it doesn't become excrement.
That was really well done. Nice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll wait patiently for the laugh.
Ha. It was not so much funny as like well-timed and clever. And so was my nod of appreciation.
I appreciate your nod of appreciation.
So yeah, and then oh God, Shevek, bless his little heart. He is just not prepared to deal with Sybil, as Midas told him. He's going to chew you up and excrete you. Hey, you got a laugh from Charles.
Oh, thank you, Charles. Charles lulled everybody.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, Sybil is manipulative. Again, I have down at the bottom of this page, why is Sybil the way he is? I mean, other than for plot reasons and for, preaching reasons, he is a bad person. As Midas had predicted, he was Sybil's man. It says he needed Sybil. He wanted to publish what he wrote and to send it to the men who could understand it, the Orosty physicists. And I'm just like, why? I mean, why does he need? He believes that he needs to publish in order to send, because Sybil has told him that it's not open, free communication. It's not just. I have had to work really hard to make this happen, and people are still. Nobody trusts them.
Yeah. Well, and he says if people find out that we're communicating with them, then we won't be able to do it anymore.
We might get squelched.
Yeah.
So that won't be but he's not used to mistrusting people, even though he has reason. He has been given reason. He knows he has reason to mistrust this dude, and yet he still continues to trust him. So that's interesting. You know, if I want to work, I have to work with him. And I wrote down at the bottom, no, you don't. There are other options. There's always other options. You got other choices. So, and he's going a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
I really don't have a whole lot of notes. He goes a little bit nuts, ends up in the hospital.
He gets sick. Yeah, he develops a fever apparently. And is talking about math deliriously with one of the nurses, which is funny. And then he gets a visitor.
Yes. Well, a visitor. Yeah. And of course, they have some difficulty, or she says, I am the mother. And he's like, oh, you are like the mother of all.
Right.
It's like, I've been reborn because I saw the math.
Yeah. And she's like, no,
He's like,
I'm
he's
the
like,
mother.
Okie dokie, drink your water, honey.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. But of course they don't have, or they have and choose not to use the personal possessive pronouns. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, guys.
Right. Because
after 7 o'clock and I'm yawning. But
because
yeah, this is his mother.
His mother, Rulag.
You could easily say something like, you know, I birthed you.
Right.
You know, you gestated inside.
You came out of me.
You know, there are ways to say it.
I shat you out of my womb.
No, it's not shat, genius.
Well, not literally. I'm using figurative language. I'm using
excretive language.
I'm speaking poetically. Yes, I'm using excretive language.
Literally excretive. And then and Rulag is like, you know, Rulag's like, yeah, Subble. I mean, she's not even in the field. And she knows that
she knows that he's a shit. Like, yeah.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Nobody likes him. Nobody likes him because he's such a jerk.
Yeah.
Hey, John. And
well, I was struck by how, and I guess this is not atypical for this society because of the way, because of just the way family units and social units are structured, but she's very cold to him. I mean, she obviously cares enough about him to have come to see him, but she's very remote. I mean, even when he tells her that Pallet, his father, is dead, and she receives that very calmly. You know, she doesn't seem grieved by it. She seems like she's more curious about it. Like, oh, well, he wasn't very old, was he? You know, it's almost like the way you would receive news about an acquaintance of an acquaintance dying. You know, where there's not really an emotional response to the learning of the
person that she hasn't been with in 15 years.
But that she has a child with, that she was close with at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she's just sort of, and even her response to Shevik is, again, like, obviously she cares something about him because she's there, but she's very cool.
I disagree.
You don't think?
No, she is guarded and she's tired because Pallet has been gone this whole time. She's had no contact with him. So it's just like, okay, so now I won't ever hear from him again. So now it's for good.
Right. Yeah, I can see it that way too.
I mean, and she seems very sensible. Like, I mean, it's not like we haven't been in contact, so it's not like I'm missing out on anything. There's no reason to be upset. I think Shevik can't see it. There's no pretense of shock or grief, but I think she is grieved, and maybe not shocked because she hasn't been in touch with him for like decades. So, maybe he did die. How is he? He's dead. Well, shit. Sorry.
Oh,
sorry. I cussed. My bad. Yes, Charles, there is a lot of bitterness in Shevik's reaction to her. Well, I think she is very affected, but I think, like I said, I think she's guarded. She knows that, not only, like, according to their society, she has no claim on him.
right.
But not only that, because she has not been part of his life, she knows she can't just walk and be like, hey,
It's me.
I birthed you. Like, I helped to raise you. How have you been?
Yeah.
No,
and
she knows. Oh.
She does tell him that, I mean, there is an indication that at least when Shevik was a baby, that they were a close family, because she tells him that we chose to keep you with us.
Yes.
Like we could have turned you over to the group, to live with the other kids. Before we did, we chose to keep you with us while you were a baby because we felt like that would be better for you, and that's what we wanted. So there is, she doesn't come across as cold in the sense that like she was a bad mom or anything. But I don't know. You're right.
I feel like we saw things from Palette's point of view earlier. Like, she's going where the work is, and if I can get a posting, I'll go with her. But I miss her, and she's not here, and she needs to do. They need her. They need
right.
her. She has to go. And here she says, "I was willing to continue the partnership."
Yeah, and it was actually Palette who
come along without a posting in his line of work.
Right. He wanted
come along and not done it. Like, they have the freedom to not work.
Right.
They don't have to work.
But he wanted to be useful. He felt wrong about going if there wasn't a reason for him to go.
Right.
Other than to be with her.
A reason that benefited the community.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it would be if it just benefited their family unit, that's selfish.
Right.
And she's like, okay, so let's be selfish. And he's like, that's no. And you know what I mean? So it's, there's.
And obviously some of that rubbed off on Shevik because he also demonstrates, a very deep level of devotion to the society and to his dad and to the society and to the principles of the society. Yes. So he, his dad making that decision and saying, yes, maybe I would. And want
also to some degree her. Like,
yeah.
Palette tells us they needed her and maybe they did. And she is doing important work, but she could have said no.
That's true.
She could have stayed there.
That's true.
And so they could not reach a resolution. So they went different ways. And so Shevik's the one who said it doesn't matter. And Rulag acknowledges that it does. And she says, the phrasing is interesting here. Rulag said in her controlled, pleasant voice, well, yes, it mattered. And it still matters. The word that Le Guin did not choose to use is gentle. And that's exactly what she's describing there. She is being gentle with him. Mm-hmm. But that word is too nurturing and too motherly. And you know what I mean? So these choices that she makes are just really interesting to think about. And again, her being controlled, like that she, like what I'm getting from it is not that she is cold, but that she is having very strong feelings and feels like she doesn't have the right to express them.
And she's controlling it. She's being restrained.
She's holding them back.
Yeah.
For all you Trekkies out there, it's like the Vulcan thing.
Ah, look at that. Look at you.
She's a stoic.
Yeah, there you go.
I know, because of Julius Caesar, Brutus is a stoic.
You could also, if you wanted to really do the Star Trek deep cut, you could say she is following the philosophy of Surak.
Yeah, I can't do that.
No, well, you can now because I just said it. You can just rip it off of me.
I would totally give you credit, though.
Oh, so you wouldn't be like Sybil?
Well, I mean, not for you.
Yes.
Besides, you already said it like on camera and it's recording it. So
Oh,
there's proof that you said it first, Steve.
mere
I mean, if I was going to
details.
steal something, I ain't going to get caught.
You'd steal some shit that we talked about in private and that
Exactly.
nobody would know except for me. I'd be like, but I
Absolutely.
said that first.
Absolutely. Yeah, y'all remember that Batman live stream that we said was my story? Shh, don't tell. That came out in 1989.
Oh shit.
So what I have one more note in the
Yeah.
chapter. And he's like feeling he's having feels for her, and he's
Right.
like, no, you're not my mom. Is totally the vibe that I'm
Yeah.
getting here. Oh, thank you. Everybody would support me, Steve. Meaner.
Well, you know, that's they would be wise to.
He saw her pain and resented it. It threatened him. It threatened his father's loyalty, that clear, constant love in which his life had taken root. What right had she, who had left Pallet in need, to come in her need to Pallet's son? I'm like, what was Pallet's need? How had she left him in need? And I'm like, what do you think?
I don't know. Maybe that's meant to imply that like Pallet,
He's delirious?
he's delirious. Maybe, yeah, because he is, or that maybe Pallet missed her, and maybe like the absence of her, even though, as we just talked about, they could have made a different choice. The fact that they didn't, and the fact that they were separated, maybe that weighed more heavily on Pallet, and it may have weighed heavily on it may have weighed heavily on her too. But Shevik wouldn't know because he wasn't with her; he was with Pallet. So he associates her with this person who left my father and hurt him or
I don't
negatively
remember
affected
if he
him.
tells us that she wrote, like back in the previous flashback, because Pallet says, or excuse me, Rulok says that Pallet wrote for a while, and then he stopped.
Right.
But I don't remember if we learned that she ever wrote back. Needed her that he, the relationship with another woman was not enough. Clearly Pallet was able to survive without her, so needed is a questionable term. What does it mean to need someone? You can survive without them.
Maybe.
Well, he did.
He did for a time until he was 35, and then he dropped dead.
For a long time. Yeah, but it wasn't her absence that killed him. He was saving kids, dude.
That's right. Yeah, he was he was a hero.
Yeah.
So take that, Rulag.
So.
Yeah, and then he after she leaves, Shevik breaks down, and there's a night we close the chapter on this nice note of one of the other patients in the hospital sort of tries to comfort him. And he isn't really comforted, but it's a nice gesture. This stranger just sort of pats him on the shoulder and says, "It's all right. It'll be all right." And
totally would go for Big Hero 6 here. There.
And it says, Shevik felt his touch, but took no comfort in it. Even from the brother, there is no comfort in the bad hour, in the dark, at the foot of the wall. What a great phrase. What a great image. It's just this whole chapter in particular is really well written.
Bleak.
Yeah. Very. And it brings it home to you.
Chat, Charles asks about the other professor, Gvarab, and we kind of skipped over her.
She is like Shevik's mentor.
Sort of, yeah. And I just. I'm sort of ambivalent in how I feel about her, because yes, like as a teacher, I know what that's like when you have someone that really understands deeply what you're trying to teach, and you can go further into the material, man, that just pulls you in and you connect. But as a teacher, part of your responsibility is to find the students where they are, and it is your job to meet them.
Right.
And so, and part of it is, she is past her prime, and it says she wandered and maundered, So she's kind of going on. She's lecturing. She's lecturing. So there's also that. And yes, yeah, exactly, Charles. He says, I love the way she seems to come alive when teaching him. On the other hand, she doesn't seem to be connecting to the other kids. Yes, I've experienced both situations. And she's not a teacher. She's not. She is technically a teacher because she is someone who teaches, but that is not her profession. She is a physicist who happens to be teaching people. You know what I mean? She does, because we don't see that interested in saying, okay, so what is it that you understand? Explain this to me so that I can see where your misunderstanding is and we can go from there. That's a teacher. Like, that's someone that the subject matter is actually secondary. The teaching part of it is first. And that's not her. And for Shevik, that's perfectly fine. He needs,
right. He wants the subject matter. Yeah.
He's a physicist, and that meets his needs. But the other students are just like, she talking different now. wait, what's going on? I don't get it no more. They're just like, whoop. So yeah, it's kind of funny. And I mean, at that level, to some degree, the students are either adults or close to it, and so they are responsible for making sure that they come up with what they need to come up with in order to, they are more in charge of their own learning at the university level. Yes, very much so. It has that vibe to it. She's in a lecture hall. It's not the same thing. And then also there's also a difference between primary and secondary teaching as well. So, it's kind of a spectrum. So, and that's the chapter.
Yay!
We've gotten through and then gone back for something we missed. Whoops, sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, so you asked when we spoke about it yesterday, if it's still holding my interest, and it is. I mean, I thought it's interesting, but it is interesting when I reflect on it. We're 4 chapters in, not a whole hell of a lot has happened.
I know, isn't it great?
But it's holding my interest. Like, I'm not getting impatient with it. I'm not going through it going, Jesus, come on, like it's holding my interest. And most of it is because I think Shevik is,
I just want to spend time with Shevik.
Yeah, he's a very interesting character and a very likable character, and he is a great lens through which to explore this world. Because the fact that he
These
is
worlds. Both
of them, but yeah, especially Anarish, because that's the one that is less familiar to us in terms of the way it's laid out. The fact that he is a true believer in that way of life, but at the same time, he is aware of not just the shortcomings of it, but also of the ways in which he himself as an individual does not always fit, even though he feels like he should, even though maybe he wants to. Like, he's a really compelling character, and it's a really smart choice by Le Guin to give us a protagonist like that, where yes, he is for the most part on board with the whole Anarish anarchist thing, but at the same time, there are these parts of him that he acknowledges and that he allows to lead him to a certain extent, that yearns for something else, that sees what they have on Eurus and thinks,
Disney princess, I want something more.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really interesting.
I Want song. Of course, we're 4 chapters in.
The I Want song, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the opening of every Disney, princess movie, like, ever.
Yeah, and it also it keeps the book from feeling didactic, and from feeling like
preachy. She's preaching without being preachy. It's great. Right. It's really good. Have you read Brave New World?
No.
Which, before this, would have been, well, of course, she doesn't call this a dystopia. Brave New World is my favorite dystopia. Shevik reminds me in some ways of John Savage, one of the central characters of that book. So, sort of all 3, Bernard, the other dude, and then John Savage, are all sort of, it's a fish out of water kind of thing. And Shevik is a fish out of water as well. We get that sense. And it works really well with your like the Charles says with high concept stories, because and speculative fiction in general works well with fish out of water stories, because the reader is not familiar with it. So when you have this character who doesn't fit in, you get to see through those interactions. You get to learn about the society and how things work and things like that.
It's a natural way of kind of smoothing exposition.
Yes. It's helpful to the reader,
and that's why that's such a common trope.
Things out and say this is how it works, and just like info dump.
That's why it's such a common trope to have a character to have a fish out of water character in stories, because it's just it's a really easy way.
That's why the Disney princesses have that I Want song. They don't fit in where they are. That's where the narrative is going, and that's what we're getting with Shevik. But I like Shevik, and I think part of it is his authenticity is a big part of it. His authenticity and his curiosity. Those are the two big things that make me like him.
Oh yeah, and for me also, I agree with that, and also to an extent, his naivete, which makes him sympathetic. It makes you want to, especially in the chapters where we see him as a younger person. Although he's still,
give him a hug.
Yeah, exactly. You feel protective of him. You're like, oh, you poor guy. Like, you can't see that Sabul is screwing you, man. Like, you just can't see it, and you want to like look out for him, because you like him so much, and he is so naive.
But it's not like, you dumbass,
right?
Because of these other things.
Because he's so earnest.
I don't like him necessarily so much because of his naivete. I like him for the other qualities, and the naivete just sort of drives the story forward. It adds some tension.
Well, it's part of it.
I know that things aren't always going to go well for you because you're not paying attention all the time. You're thinking about math. Quit thinking about math and pay attention. Yeah,
get your nose out of the book. Get your nose out of the book, nerd. Pay attention to the world.
Extended. No. See, I don't think that's fair, because if anything's extended, it's the freaking Fountainhead. I mean, look, I read Anthem. Okay, I read Anthem, and I'm good there. I did not read the Fountainhead, or doesn't she have another one that's long?
Atlas Shrugged.
Huh?
Atlas Shrugged.
Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, didn't read that either.
Me neither. I didn't read any of it because I think she's a horrible person. And
I was a lot younger, and I'm like this. The Anthem is short. And it is interesting, and it moves. It's well written as a story. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a high concept story. I have less problems with it than I do with the ones who walk Le Guin's, the ones who walk away from Olas. So, and if approached in the right way, if approached truly critically by somebody who is well-versed, especially in dystopian literature, to say, so what happens next? And why are these people, kind of like we're doing with Sabul? Mm-hmm. What made these people?
What makes you like this? Yeah.
Why are the bad guys bad guys? Just because you're a bad guy does not mean you have to be a bad guy. Sabul, why are you a bad guy? So,
Chief Dancing Ostrich.
Okay, yeah, I was like Dancing. Okay, I got dancing on. I'm like, no, not dancing on anything. Was she uninteresting? I think people are interesting. That
would be another way that you and I differ. There are some people that I just think are not interesting at all.
I believe that, but you're just wrong, and so that's okay.
Well, and I tell you what, it's not that with Ayn Rand, she may have led an interesting life. I'm just not interested in finding out about it, because I think she was a horrible person. And
I'm not interested in finding out about it because I've got so much else to do.
Well, that's fair. But I mean, even if I had all the time in the world to hear every interesting thing about Ayn Rand, I would pass, because I think, and not only her as an individual, but most of the people, especially as grown-ups who are in their 30s and 40s and 50s, who still seem to think that she was like some kind of prophet, are for the most part awful pieces of shit who are ruining the world for everybody else. So my interest in her or anything about her is extremely limited.
Well, I didn't know how much of a terrible person she was. The foundation will send you free books. And I didn't know. I was just like, hey, free books.
Free books.
And I hadn't read it, so like I got it and I read it, and I'm like, this will fit in well with. Let's see, we had 1984. We had, or I was able to. We had 1984. I was able to get my hands on Animal Farm. I don't know how I managed that. And then I wrote to publishers. Oh no, Donors Choose. Through Donors Choose, I got.
Yeah.
We had The Giver, I think. We had Lord of the Flies and Fahrenheit 451, and I got City of Ember, and I got Uglies, and so I did book circles with, and that Anthem was one of them, and I got them for free. And so we talked about the ways that what dystopian literature was. I did a unit on, my novel unit was dystopian literature, and then gradually, since all of those books, I think except 1984, were paperbacks, they eventually just went to pieces and
disintegrated
some of them back, and it is what it's the way of well-used books. It is their fate, much like the Velveteen Rabbit, they became real. So yeah, Kitty, yep, there's a little girl, she is looking out over the room. Princess.
So before we can keep hanging out with the live chat as long as you want, but before we wrap up, we do need to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Next Friday is Christmas, so I will not be doing a live stream on Christmas Day. So there will not be an Ask Away. I'm just bumping the Ask Away to whatever the next one. The next Ask Away will actually be January 4th. Or not January 4th, January.
A week from Christmas is New Year's Day.
January. Well, no, no, that would be our next read away. That would be our next one of these.
But my point is, that's also like holiday. I'm just saying.
Right. So, but that's what we need to talk about. Are we doing the next one of these on New Year's, or are we doing the next one of these?
That cat is not guarding me. That cat does not care about me. Where's my boy? He's not around. Only little girl. She is daddy's girl. That cat is not guarding me. That cat does not care. Just unless I'm giving her food. Well, so here's what I want to know. And you can feel free to say, I don't want to discuss that in public, or I just don't want to tell you, Dana.
Go ahead.
What exactly are your plans for Christmas Day, Steve?
I'm probably having dinner with my family.
Okay.
I'm not sure what I may be done in time to do an Ask Away that evening, but I probably just
but also you don't want to make the plan for the Ask Away and then not know if you'll be able to
do it. Exactly. But I personally, I don't know what your plans are. I have no plans at all for New Year's, so we could totally do a stream New Year's. Like,
what my plans are for New Year's. I'm going to be here alone.
Well, do you want to?
I didn't talk about this on Wednesday because it was really new, but we do have my husband has had a positive test, so we are sequestering in quarantine. Well, no, there's two of us here. Sometimes he feeds the cat, sometimes I feed the cat, but the cat loves him, not me. I am not loved by Blackmore. She tolerates me.
So, but anyway,
she's convinced that that's her husband. That is her man, and I'm intruding, which is hilarious.
So, so since you'll be around, do you want to do a show on the 1st, or do you want to take that off and just do our next show on what I guess would be the 15th?
Let's go for the 1st.
Okay.
It's a long way away. I'll forget.
Well, I'll remind you, but yeah. It's fine with me. I just wanted to make so I will not be doing an Ask Away a week from today, but 2 weeks from today on New Year's, we will do the next read away. We'll do chapter 5.
Yay.
So
Sounds
awesome.
Good.
Sounds good to me too.
Awesome. Aw. Thank you, beautifulest one. Says that he's surrounding me and my husband in healing and fortifying love and light and patience. Oh my goodness. I just want things to not, I just want to know, like I actually, like last semester, once they said we're closed for the rest of the year, I was like, okay, I can do this. I can teach remotely. I can do it.
Right.
Now some of my students couldn't learn remotely because they did not have, reliable internet and or devices. But like if we could get, connections, I can absolutely teach asynchronously or synchronously. No problem. I'm totally confident about that. I hate not knowing. I had Charles, was it you? Was asking about, saying we're going to be fully virtual. I'm like, they say that now, but I hope that they stay fully virtual. Our plan, they are saying that we're going to go back 5 days a week in person, and I'm just like, I understand this because like so many of our students don't have good internet, but like,
yeah,
not over, and it's not going to be better
and
after holidays.
And if everybody goes back to school 5 days a week, it's going to make it worse.
It's going to get worse before that because, oh my gosh. I'm just like, if you are the praying sort, please pray. Because, and wash your hands regularly.
Please, oh God, just use your head. That's what I want to tell people. And I know, I'm sure most of the people who watch my channel, because you're the smart people, I don't need to tell you this, but just for the public in general, who it's like, just please, for Christ's sake, it's December. This started in February here. It's December, and we're still having to deal with this. Use your fucking head. Don't go to Christmas dinner. Don't have a party. Don't go out anywhere that you don't have to go. If you do go out, wear a mask and socially distance.
No, and you say that, and then you say on Christmas you're having dinner with your family.
My family, which is like 3 people, and I'm going to come right back here and not go anywhere for the next however many days. Like, and honestly, if a member of my family tells me that they've been in contact with someone who has COVID or had a positive test, then I'm not going.
Last night we actually, I talked about the Dispossessed that I was reading this with. I've got a family book group that started back up. We'd sort of paused. We'd started we've been doing it over the summer and then paused during the semester because several of us are teachers. And, but we started up, we read Alex Trebek's memoir, and it was so nice to talk to people, to talk to my family. I'm very, very, very fortunate that I get along with my family. I'm so grateful for that. But like, and I do, because we were in quarantine, and usually we shop at one of the grocery stores does not do contactless. They bring it out to you. I got some stuff from Walmart. And I said, well, could you get this and this and this and just bring it over? And my dad, they brought it over today, and my dad came up and he's like, well, I'll just come inside. And I'm like, that's like exactly not the point. And like, I wanted to go out and give him a hug because he was like right there. I didn't do it. And it wasn't, it was hard, but we got to have like a 2-hour conversation last night, just sort of leaning in and talking at the camera. And it was really nice, that sort of connection, I think, matters more anyway. Yeah. So like, talk to you guys, you have the internet, obviously, because you're here. So like, make those connections. I mean, that's how we met. We met online. Absolutely. And that's how I met my best friend, Zabby.
Absolutely. And if you are the type of person that misses that in-person, like physical connection, then just use your head and act right now so that you can have that connection back sooner. Because the more we ignore the rules and pretend that this isn't still happening, the worse it's going to get, and the longer we will have to maintain distance from people. Yeah. And
I'm very hopeful that here, I honestly don't know. I honestly do not know. Next school year, I am relatively hopeful that I am relatively confident that by Christmas next year, COVID will be over. I am uncertain if it will be over by summer, like by the end of summer, by school.
Yeah.
I really don't know. But I think just I'm looking at the timeline of the Spanish flu back in the early 20th century. That and the knowledge that we have about the way that viruses work and the way that they mutate, as opposed to bacteria. So I'm really hopeful that we haven't even been in this a year. Think about that.
Yeah.
We haven't been, and I'm talking about a
Yeah.
whole year.
Well,
And
but the other thing to keep in mind as well, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I mean, there are like New Zealand, for example,
Mhm.
they didn't invent a vaccine that before we did.
Yeah,
They just acted right. They just
yeah.
took it seriously and socially distanced and wore masks and shut down when they had to. And now they are well through the worst of it. In fact, I think they just this past week, the prime minister said that they were free of it, like that it was basically over there, and they lifted most of their COVID related restrictions. They did not have to wait for the vaccine because they acted like adults, and they,
They're
just
also on an island. Remember, we talked about this. We talked about this. Geography is destiny.
geography is destiny.
That is not nothing. That matters. That
There,
absolutely matters.
but
And of course, they're yes, absolutely, their behavior is like a major factor.
the hard-headedness,
It's not over.
the
Not even in New
hard-headedness,
Zealand, because if people start going, they have
Oh,
to
yeah.
have travel restrictions there. They can't let other people
absolutely,
in.
because
So if you live in New Zealand and
as-
you have family somewhere else, you still can't go see them.
well, but if you live in New Zealand and you have family somewhere else, isn't that why you live in New Zealand?
No, you live in New Zealand because it's freaking beautiful there.
Well, and it's far away from the rest of your family. You're like, I'm sorry, they don't let but I mean, it's it's not a coincidence, and it's not all geography to explain to explain. I know you didn't, but it's not like it's
misrepresent me.
There's something about the bullheaded, proudly ignorant American character that is the reason why it is so much worse here than it is in most other places. It's because we're dipshits and we don't do what we're supposed to do, and we scorn intelligence and we embrace ignorance. And that's why there are so many dead people and so many sick people. That did not need to be that way. And a lot of it is from the top.
No,
I think
that's an oversimplification, and I think it's wrong.
I
Because
disagree with you.
Intelligent people, I think it's not a lack of intelligence.
Well, maybe you're splitting hairs as far as intelligent. I mean, it's just
I'm
lack of sense.
precise,
Lack of sense.
Stephen Clay Shives.
Thank you. Lack of sense.
Not lack of sense.
Lack of being well. Find the perfect word. It's like we know how to do.
I like you, but you keep talking.
We know what to do to deal with this, because other countries have done it and have done a much better job of managing it, and we just refuse to do it. That's what it is. Whatever the word is for whatever that trait is, that's the problem, is that we are too ignorant and bullheaded and just whatever it is. Other countries have managed it much more effectively than we have, and it's our fault. Not all of our faults as individuals, because a lot of us have tried our best to be responsible.
Like
but as a culture,
when you have too many who are, this is what would happen on an ARIS if enough people decided that they weren't going to go along with it. They were just going to, they were all going to take extra desserts. This is what would happen.
Exactly. And I am grateful and hopeful that, like, Biden is saying that he's going to ask people for 100 days of wearing a mask, which I think is great. But if we had been doing that before, we wouldn't need to be wearing a mask for 100 days starting in January, because it would be over.
I will say that as a teacher, I'm not in close physical proximity to my students, because we're spaced out and we're doing partial distance learning, and it is psychologically hard for me to wear the mask all day, and sometimes I just can't do it because almost none of my students wear masks, and I know that I am wearing my mask to protect them,
right?
And they're not wearing masks to protect each other, and I'm just like, why am I bothering? There is an existential despair that is part of it. And the fact, additionally, the fact that you have to go to work and you have to be exposed to people when you could conceivably stay home. You could just stay home, but because the leaders and the rich people of our country want to extend their power and increase their wealth, they're not willing to shut down. I think if we had shut down and we'd actually, honest to God, shut freaking down, and we had supported our families the way we say that we care about families, we don't show that through our actions or through the policies that we support as, you know, as privileged people. If we had done that, we would see more people wearing masks if they thought it mattered.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah, and what some random geek just said in the chat, there was complete lockdown. I think if starting in like March, when it became obvious that this was going to be bad, if the federal government had rallied, organized with the state governors, because in cases like this, state governors actually have a lot more power to enforce lockdowns than the federal government does. If we had all gotten together and said, okay, we're going to lock everything down except the absolutely most essential places for 2 months, and we're going to pay people to stay home.
Yeah.
So they don't have to worry about where they're going to put food on the table, or they're going to pay their rent or their bills or whatever. We're going to put a moratorium on evictions. You know, we'll give people a certain amount per week or a certain amount per month until this is over. Not just one $1,200 check, but like a recurring amount until this is over. It would be over by now. I mean, we might still have some restrictions, but it would. But we would. I mean, we certainly would not have 300,000 dead people and 17 million sick people. You know. And yeah, and Cardinal Doomsday in the chat asks, is 100 days too little too late? Yes, of course it is. But what are we going to do now? I mean, we still need to do something.
It's not nothing. It's too little too late to solve the problem.
Yeah.
But as a symbolic gesture, a gesture of solidarity, it's so important.
We still need to do it.
I love the fact that
Absolutely.
It's not a mandate. It's not a mandate. It is a request from a leader who is going to lead by example.
Right. Although
I'm really hopeful about that.
The reason that it's not a mandate is because it can't be. If it could be, it should be. I mean, to me, any government jurisdiction in this country, any governor or mayor or whoever who has the legal authority to make it a mandate should make it a mandate.
Yeah.
The president doesn't have that authority.
I have an internet friend who was in Malaysia, and she said that you were allowed to leave your house to get prescription medicine or to go to the doctor if you were sick. That was it. Like you couldn't go out to get food. They would bring
it to you.
They would bring the food to you.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like everything else, you stayed in your house. You weren't supposed to be, I think, more than 100 yards from your residence. And she said she saw one of her neighbors, you know, not taken away, but was charged and fined. Mm-hmm. And they took it very seriously. And I didn't look. This was back in like, you know, February, March, when, you know, we were starting to hear about things. So I think it was March, maybe April even. Yeah. There's just.
Yeah. So, you know, just please, if you're watching, please be careful.
If you're watching and it's not 5 years from now,
and it's not,
with the society that still exists.
If it's 5 years from now,
just be grateful. Be so grateful that you made it.
If it's 5 years from now, hey, cool, the internet still exists. We still have electricity. There's still a civilization. If you're,
I mean, you should be thinking of that in 5 years. You know, we might be dead.
That's a nice hopeful thought to end on.
None of us is promised tomorrow, Steve.
That's true. It's very true, Dana. But yeah, I mean, please be safe, be sensible, wash your hands, wear a mask if you go out, socially distance.
Find soap that you like, so that it incentivizes you to use it a lot.
Yeah, sure. Whatever you need to do. If not perpetuating a deadly pandemic isn't enough motivation, get some nice smelly soap.
Add motivation on top of motivation. You can layer it. Just like
there you
get yourself some nice, you know, order some nice comfy jammies, and some tea. Speaking of which, tea.
It hasn't gotten here yet.
I'm wondering if they meant the Monday before Christmas. Like it was probably
maybe.
They didn't mean by Monday. They meant by the Monday before Christmas.
Every day, every.
Get yourself a new video game like Cyberpunk 2077.
Sure, if you're into that.
If that's your thing, or get yourself a book or like me. There's another one at the library, and I can go there since it's on hold. I can say I have this book. and they will just bring it out to me.
Bring it to me.
They will bring it out to me and hand it to me, and put it in the car, and then I can just leave. And then when I come back, I can put it in the drop slot, like contactless library. Yes.
It's a beautiful thing.
Oh gosh, I love libraries. Jeez, how can anybody be like against socialism when libraries are a thing?
Yeah.
God, libraries are awesome.
And they benefit everybody.
They do. And then I'm still working on, where's the other one? This one, because we finished, I put this not on like complete hold, but I slowed down on this one because we were reading the Alex Trebek book. We're like, we'll have that read by next week. I was like, sure. It's like, so I put this one aside. I haven't made any progress on this in a week, but now I can.
Yeah.
And we'll pick up the other one. So I'm going to finish this one and then take it and the Alex Trebek book back. And then I'll get the other one, Still Life by Louise Perry. And then also still be working on this one. Woohoo!
Woohoo! So you're all set.
I am all set. Plus, I'm for my my book talk videos. I still need. I have 4 of them that are like on my favorite bookshelf that I need to revisit because I haven't read them in so many years. Yeah, I've got lots of books. So I'm good.
But that's par for the course for you. You always have lots of books. You just have maybe you have a little bit more time than usual to read them, perhaps coming up in the next couple of weeks.
I can get my grading done.
Yeah. Well, so a couple of weeks might be optimistic. All right. So anything else?
Some Random Geek you are. Yes, the charity links.
Yes.
Has already mentioned them, but let's, since we're getting towards the close of the show, let's mention them again.
Absolutely. Do not forget the charity links to help out some of our friends who are in a little bit of a difficult situation financially. Some Random Geek is kind enough to curate this Google Doc filled with links to fundraisers and PayPal links and stuff like that. For some of our friends who need a helping hand, it is linked in the description of this video. Just follow that link and it will take you to the doc and you can scroll through and see who needs help. And if you have some extra bucks on hand and you want to help somebody out, please do so. We would all really appreciate it. And yeah, so there you because some Random Geek can't be the sugar parent to all of them. Exactly. So yeah,
I'm so sad that your libraries were shut from April to November, but it's no longer November. So
yeah, are they open now? Hopefully,
it sounds like they're open back up. Yeah, contactless. Contactless interlibrary loan. Oh God, yeah. I love contactless interlibrary loan. It's great. That's all I got.
Alrighty. Well then, like I said, like we talked about earlier, I will not be back a week from tonight to do Ask Away because that's Christmas. But on Monday will be the final conversation stream of the year, and my guest will be Dr. Christy Winters.
Yeah, don't forget that she's a doctor.
She's a doctor. And we'll probably talk politics and the election and stuff like that. Because the last time Christy and I actually did a live stream together was the election night live stream. So we can talk about everything that has happened since and whatever else happens to come to mind. Because Christy and I always have a good time when we talk. So that'll be Monday. Wednesday, Dana and I will be back to watch the next episode of Firefly for Trek Reluctantly. Bushwhacked. And yep. Friday I'm off. And
because it's Christmas.
And
Christmas is all about family.
And I will be putting the X in Christmas. I don't know what that even means, but no, I'm not. I am. Am I doing a stream on the 20th? Actually, no.
Do you want to know what that means? Because I know what that means.
I'm not doing a stream on the 28th. Some Random Geek. No.
I know what that means.
What does it mean?
Do you want to know?
Please, I would. Please.
The X is the Greek letter chi.
Chimus.
No, it's an abbreviation for Christ.
So the X actually stands for Christ.
X actually means, it literally means, like when people write Xmas, it means Christmas.
It means Christmas, of course.
So.
Of course.
Some Random Geek, that is true unless you're writing in Greek, and then it just looks weird to those of us who are not familiar with the Greek alphabet. I actually am, or was back in the day, but I can no longer read Greek lowercase. Not happening anymore. Out of practice.
I've had other priorities.
There
Well,
you go.
okay, so I can just run my mouth, but I need some tea, I think.
Okay, so we're gonna you go get your tea. We will wrap up the show. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the next chapter of this. I'm glad you all seem to be enjoying it. We're enjoying it too. It's a really great series
And
to
it's
do.
interesting.
Yeah, it's a good book, and it's good. It's great to talk about it, especially with Dana. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Please be safe and
Bye,
have a good
everybody.
holiday.
Stay healthy. All that good
Yes.
stuff.